I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us for this webinar on building a content marketing machine. There's actually a pretty interesting workshop we've kind of put together. We're going to do a little bit of a unique format. We've kind of broken out sort of a complete kind of essentials class for understanding how inbound marketing works. That's broken into 5 sessions, and so we're going to do a 1-hour session over the next 5 weeks each Wednesday afternoon. But one of the other things we're going to do that is pretty interesting, I'm pretty excited about, is that it's actually going to be some hands-on work. So there won't be any hands-on stuff today. Today we're mainly going to be going over strategy, presentation style, but starting in session 2, we're going to give people a sandbox. So they actually have a platform that they can build a lot of the tools and build out a website that has all the tools that are needed for doing inbound marketing. And so we'll be doing, as we get into session 2, we'll be doing a lot of exercises, and we'll be doing a lot of exercises, and there'll also be a workbook so that people can do the exercises by themselves, kind of self-paced. So today we're going to be kind of talking about what exactly is content marketing. Sort of a synonym for content marketing is also inbound marketing. Sometimes I'll use one phrase, sometimes I'll use the other, and depending who you talk to, there's a fair number of people that are kind of like they're basically the same thing. Although sometimes people might say that content marketing is a subset of inbound marketing. But really we're going to be talking about kind of this whole sort of new way of marketing that's been emerging over the last several years that's proven to kind of be effective as social media and the search engines and some of the dynamics on the web are happening. And so if you kind of look back, about 10, 15 years ago, we started to see this interesting shift in sort of that traditional marketing stopped kind of working the way it used to for, say, the second half of the 20th century. And really a lot of this has to do with that now we're just so inundated with ads that as humans we've come up with mechanisms, both technology and the way our brains have kind of rewired themselves to be able to ignore a lot of the advertising that's going on. And so, we've got this new reality that sort of the old days of interrupt and repeat marketing doesn't work as well as it used to. Now, people are still looking for information, and they want help in knowing what to buy. They just don't necessarily want to have their really sort of interrupted by all these mass messages sent to them. And of course, what's happened is that the internet has now moved the power to the customer. And so a lot of people, they're doing their research online to figure out what types of products they should be buying, particularly when it comes to more sophisticated products. They're maybe a little bit more abstract, particularly things like B2B businesses or major decisions like where to have a medical procedure done or so forth. And so Google and the search engines are a place where a lot of people start to find information on what they should be purchasing. There's also a lot of authority sites out there. Everything from kind of hobbyist bloggers up to online magazines. It used to be in the old days. I remember, my dad, when he was going to buy a new car, he'd go down to the library and get Consumers Reports and look through that stuff. Well, now not only is Consumer Reports online and that information could be accessed, there's thousands of other types of articles that are out there, and so there's no lack of information and reviews that people can look at to kind of get an idea of the authority from people who are authorities to a certain level, might be self-claimed authorities on the types of things they should be buying. And of course, there's the rise of social media, where now people can interact with their peers across the entire world. It used to be when people wanted to know what to buy, they would go to the local market. And they could talk to people there. Well, now it's sort of this global market of all these friends we're connected with, and of course we can get our peer recommendations from them. And so the thing that we're going to be talking about today is that if you there's sort of this new style of website that has emerged over the last couple years that's really focused on a suite of marketing tools that are needed for doing kind of marketing in the modern day internet world. And so if you build your website the correct way, you can leverage all these different new channels where people are researching products. And one of the first things it's important to understand about sort of this new way, this new way of doing marketing. HubSpot coins it as inbound, and I actually really kind of like that word because the old way of marketing was really this interrupt and repeat. It's pushing. We're just pushing messages about our company out and so forth. And that was fine when people had 3 networks to watch, and there wasn't a whole lot of all these different ads being pushed at them. But nowadays, the consumer has the control. And so there's a new way that we've got to actually go and attract those people to come to us, so what's known as pull marketing. And so it's no longer about interrupting people's day. It's now about how can we take what people are naturally looking for and use that to pull them towards the types of things that we're doing as a business or maybe a nonprofit organization or so forth. And so there's a kind of a 3-step cycle in how the content marketing or inbound process works. The first step is about attracting. And what's important about attracting is that this is really all about your audience, doing what it is they want to draw them into the website. And then once you've created delight with your audience, now we move to converting. And so converting is where we get people doing things that help drive business. Help brings revenue in the door, or donations, or gets people signing up to try things and things along those lines. And then really the third part is there's a lot of moving pieces with this new style of marketing, and so it's very important to kind of implement some fairly elaborate analytics and metrics so you can understand how to do things better. And so you're always looking at improving doing the attracting and converting steps better. So the traditional website is kind of the way you see a lot of companies building their websites, particularly small organizations, where they really kind of just take what's called I call a brochureware website, where they really almost take like a brochure for their company, they put it online, maybe put a contact us form or request a consultation, and anyone who submits that becomes a sales lead. And unfortunately, this style of website really doesn't work very well. You're just one of many, many, many other websites in your industry, and so if you're not doing something special, this is not going to be a particularly effective way to building a website. So let's kind of look at a more effective way of doing these things. So our first part is we need to attract. We need to bring traffic to our web properties. And so the key to attracting visitors is all about creating remarkable content. And there's a lot of people that will talk about content is king. That's kind of a generally accepted thing. Although what's interesting is there's a lot of people, when they say content is king, they kind of mean any content. It's more about quantity than quality. But in reality, and that might have been true and effective 5 years ago, but with a lot of the things that, now the internet's kind of polluted with kind of this low-quality content that was all about quantity, and the search engines have changed their algorithm to find this kind of stuff. Really what's important now is quality. Quantity is still important, but you want to do quality is become more important. And so what we mean by remarkable content is this is content that when someone reads, they want to remark on it. They want to share it with their friends, or it's something that's memorable. And so what does remarkable content do that, say, just your kind of plain Jane, run-of-the-mill content doesn't do? Well, people want to link to it. So it sort of helps create these bridges from other websites and social platforms to your website. It's also something that's fairly easy to share and spread through social media. And so it leverages these just massive amounts of people that are on these social media platforms, and you kind of get this multiplicative effect of people spreading your word. And then it's really kind of the secret weapon to ranking in the search engines year in and year out. And over the last few decades, as search engine optimization has been kind of a big thing, a lot of people they kind of come up with ways of producing plain sort of subpar content. And it used to be that you could trick the search engines with that, but they've gotten smarter and better, and so a lot of those old techniques have kind of rolled off. But ultimately, what the search engines want to do is they want to send people to great content. And so if you're creating that great content, that's not something that the search engines want to have filtered out, and something that'll lose its effectiveness as they get smarter at filtering out this poor content. So it's kind of that key ingredient to making sure that you get long-term value from search engine optimization. So what does attraction content kind of look like? There's a lot of different types of attraction content. So blogs, videos, and of course video gets more and more popular, podcasts, photos, infographics, wikis. You can even do things like forums. There's lots of different ways of creating attraction content. But the one that's probably the best when someone's starting off is a blog. A blog's kind of the easiest to understand. There are times, I would say that when we're talking with people, we recommend probably 8 to 9 times out of 10 that a blog's a great place to start. Every once in a while, because of someone's business, it may be videos, possibly photos, and some of the other types of things. But blogs are a great place to start. And so we're going to be talking about how to attract using blogs, but really a lot of the principles would work if, say, video is a better format for the type of organization that you have. So what's really kind of amazing is what the impact of kind of creating this remarkable content in the form of blogging has on a website. And so a platform out there that has been a pioneer in this area is Hubspot. And so Hubspot, they do a survey. They have, this is from the 2013 survey. They have about 10,000 websites running this platform, and they're monitoring how many times people a day are blogging. They also know how many leads are being submitted and things like that, because that's a part of their platform. And so what they found, though, is that people that blog 2 to 3 times a week get 3.5 times more traffic from companies that don't. Even more interesting is they did the same same analysis, but looked at leads that were coming in. And here the impact is even more remarkable. That companies that blog 2 to 3 times a week get 5.5 times more leads than companies that don't. And what's interesting is they're actually getting more leads, even though the traffic only jumped 3.5 times. Leads jumped 5.5 times. And the reason that you're seeing this is that there's also an effect, sort of like a sampling effect that happens with creating this goodwill attraction content, and it's a little bit like when getting free samples at a store. And so a lot of times, you might walk into a store and someone's got a free sample they're going to give you of some new yogurt or something like that. And a lot of times you would have never thought to buy that yogurt, but you do because you got a free sample. And you got a chance to taste it and understand what it's about, and that's actually the way content can work for consulting services and stuff like that that are less tangible, that a piece of content can kind of show an example of what it might be like to work with this organization. The other things you've got wow, that one slipped my tongue. Reciprocity, where people basically you give someone something and they feel that they should give back to you. And so there's not just creating more traffic, creating this content also helps us generate more leads. Plus, it also helps us show that you're a thought leader, and so there's more trust, creating more leads. So one of the things that we find is that people are always like, where do I start when I want to get into content marketing? And so really the best place to start is just reading either competitors' websites if they're doing content marketing, industry-related blogs, different forums, place where people hang out. LinkedIn can be a great place, like LinkedIn groups. For example, can be a great place to kind of read the types of things that people are talking about and people are interested in. And so you look at what articles are getting traction, which ones have the most comments on them, or the most shares, and so forth, and you can get a fairly good idea on the types of things that people are interested in talking about. And then, of course, one of the other things that's very important to look at is, because it takes some effort to get started in content marketing, is what type of content do you already have? So, it might be that you might have some training that's already developed that you could be broken apart and turned into blogs or videos or what have you. It might be that you've got some studies that you've done or some white papers, or even a help desk app of whenever you're getting customer service questions. And so taking some of the most common questions you're getting and some of those answers. And so a lot of times people have got some sort of database or some resources they can tap into that makes it a lot easier to kind of get started putting out this helpful information to customers. So what does a great blog look like? Well, first of all, it gives you the ability to quickly post remarkable content. And that's really what a content management system does. And so many years ago, websites were built a lot of times using static pages. Every once in a while, they're still built that way. But nowadays, most time, there's some sort of software running the website that allows people who are non-technical to add and edit content on the site. And so that's an important component to doing content marketing. Also, I think it's very important to incorporate the ability to integrate multimedia and other kinds of design elements to create a glossy look on all devices, everything from mobile phones on up to the large screen monitors that people have. And this can get a little tricky. There's some solutions out there for doing it, but one of the things you want to do is you want to look like a professional magazine look. And so you're going to need to integrate in multimedia and create this engaging content with things like sidebar boxes. And when you integrate images in, maybe having some croppings and styles that go to those images. And so you want to make sure you've got a way to make these things look consistent and look good, even if you're sitting on a smartphone. You need the ability to organize content by topics, so sort of taxonomies, tagging, things along those lines, and the ability to offer additional resources. One thing that's particularly powerful is having recommended content. Also, you want to give the readers the ability to engage your business through commenting. In particular, we like to use social commenting. So there's these platforms, and you'll see them. They become kind of ubiquitous on the web, like Discuss and so forth. That are not the sort of built-in systems that you might have in a WordPress or some other types of websites. And so you want to make it easy for people to comment. You also want to make it easy for people to share content, and really even for you to share your own content as you're creating content. And then the ability to optimize posts so that they are relevant to search engines and can rank well in search engines. So how to get started? One thing is you want to set up your blog on your domain. There's a lot of these sort of SaaS platforms, and a lot of them are free, and it's very attractive. So like blogger.com, wordpress.com, things along those lines. But really you want to make sure that your blog is on your domain. And there are some ways using those SaaS platforms. There are tricks to kind of make it look like something's on a domain even though it's sitting on another platform. Ideally, your blog would be sitting at something like yourdomain.com/blog. What used to kind of be detrimental of doing what's called a subdomain, where it's blog.yourdomain.com, nowadays isn't so bad. I still think it's a little bit preferred to do it with a /blog, but both of those are pretty good ways because you want to get that juice coming to your main website. And then start by creating content in different flavors. One tip I would use here is that a lot of times in the beginning, it's sometimes good just to get going. And don't worry too much about finding your voice. If you can, great, and you're a natural writer, great. But otherwise, just get going, and then over time, work on polishing things up. But start thinking about different types of articles that can be created, and try different ones out to see which ones resonate with your audience. Promote your content through email, newsletters, social media, every way you can think of to promote your content. You want to be doing that. And of course, that's going to involve building followers. So you're going to need to be building an email list, and over time, people start to subscribe to your feeds, which will notify them that they've got new content on your site. Another important piece is be reading other people's blogs and then commenting on those blogs. And really, in many ways, blogs were, and this seemed much more this way in the early days, but still very true, of almost sort of this decentralized discussion going on. So one person might post a piece of content, and then people comment, and then somebody else might post another piece of content. And so there's sort of this way of having sort of self-organizing but non-centralized way of organizing content. So commenting is a way to kind of get known and generate interest in your own blog. And then this does take some patience. So ideally, you'd want to get up to, say, writing a couple times a month. On a website doesn't necessarily mean that you personally have to do it, but your team, or maybe you're outsourcing some, but you want to get up to at least a couple blogs a week. And then it'll take a little while for that energy to be kind of seen by the search engine, social media. But be patient. This is kind of a way of marketing in the long game. So one of the important things to do with your content is integrate with social media. And so by doing a social media integration allows users to share your content. It gives additional opportunities for people to create these bridges to your website. And it makes it easier for you and other people in your staff to be able to share your own content. And so this is actually nowadays fairly easy to do. And these are, really you're looking at the buttons that you see on a lot of websites that say, share this on these different platforms. And so really a good quick start guide to doing this is set up some profiles on relevant social media sites, and then use something like add this or share this. It makes it very easy to put buttons on that both can share content, but they can also give links to become a follower on these different platforms. And then whenever you create content, you can go ahead and use these same buttons to share your own content. And you might, and let other of your coworkers and other people in your organization know that a new piece of content's been created, and encourage them to use these widgets to go ahead and do the same sharing. So search engine optimization, of course, is a critical part of content marketing. And one of the things that I will say that makes content marketing different from, I'd say, traditional SEO is traditional SEO a lot of times is looking at ranking well in the search engines as an end to itself, and that's sort of the goal. It's really about doing things to rank well. Content marketing is really about content first, but the search engines are a very important piece of this. It's just that we're not looking at it, we'll do whatever it takes to rank well. It's we're going to create great content, we're going to optimize it to place well, but we also really care about what the impression is when someone comes to this content. And so, how important are the search engines? 44% of online shoppers begin when they're searching for a product using a search engine. 70% of links are the organic links, and most people think nowadays know what are the organic links and the paid links, but the organic links are in the middle, and the paid links are normally marked as sponsored or something like that. And most people know that the organic links are more authoritative, where the paid links are people just paying to be up there. And so a lot of people have kind of this habit of that the organic links get clicked more often. And of those organic links, 60% of the clicks go to the top 3 search results. So it's obviously very important to rank in the top 3 search results, or even the first page for key terms related to what it is your organization does. So how do we rank well? There's a lot to it, but this is kind of a brief overview. We're going to actually go deeper into this in the 3rd section, which will be about SEO, but kind of as a quick overview, the first part is you've got to have great code on your website. Luckily nowadays, this used to be a kind of a big challenge 10 years ago. Luckily nowadays, most of the quality CMSs, either out of the box or with a few extra modules and plugins, are able to create this code. One little line of warning, though, is sometimes themers can actually kind of mess a lot of this stuff up. So it might be that the CMS creates good quality code for the search engines, but the theme plays a part too, and it has to be well coded. And so, if you're ever creating a custom theme for a website, make sure your theme also produces good code. URL structures are important. A lot of times when you deal with a content management system, things tend to be numbered sequentially, so your first piece of content might be 1 and 2 and 3, and that a lot of times can lead to sort of these ugly URLs like mydomain.com/?ID = 5. And that's not a very friendly URL, and so you really want something that's like mydomain.com/blog/why widgets are great. Things that are more human readable, and again, most content management systems nowadays give you the ability to manage URLs at that level. But it's important to also do that as you're adding content. There's also the content structure. The way the way web pages work is there's sort of 2 parts to the page. There is the body, which is the visible part that people see, that's the content, and there's a meta area called the head. And this is really sort of information about the page, things like the title, or maybe keywords, description, things like that. And what's important is that there's certain types of tags that are used, both as kind of one set that's used in the body and certain ones that are used up in the title. And it's important that you're using these tags properly to give semantic meaning to your content so the search engines can better interpret what the content's about. Now that might sound complex. The good news is that a lot of times there's tools that will help people even if they're not familiar with how these tags work. There's tools in a lot of content management systems that'll help make sure that these tags get implemented properly. Although a lot of times as a content marketer or person who's creating content, you got to make sure that those things are filled in. On-page SEO is this is the area where you personally have a lot of the impact. And so this is really about when you're creating pieces of content, choosing good keywords, and in particular, a lot of times picking what are called long tail keywords that you can rank well for and are very, very relevant to the content, and then optimizing the different pieces of content and tags so that you'll rank well for these things. We're going to spend, we've got a section in part 3 where we go through kind of a process for doing this, how to pick keywords, how to optimize content, and so forth. And another very important factor is what's called off-page SEO. This is sort of what other websites are doing, and so getting other websites to link to your content using keywords and so forth. And this is actually one of the things that's least in your control. But by creating good content, sharing it in certain ways, you're going to encourage behavior of people putting those links onto their websites. And so this is even an area that remarkable content can have a significant impact of sort of generating these authentic links from authority websites, which is hard to do through some of the more gray hat link begging schemes that traditional SEO a lot of times uses. So, our mothers told us growing up never to judge a book by a cover, but the problem is that's the way our brains are wired. Whenever we see, many of us, whenever we see a new situation, we look for visual cues to understand this new environment. And so in the web, what happens a lot of times is that people judge the credibility of a website based on its design. Does it look good? And so 75% of people, they judge the credibility of a company based on their website's design. Maybe even more challenging is that when websites, that critical first impression, when people decide sort of that that instinct in us that says, can I eat it? Should I flee? Sort of that fight or flight, that critical first few seconds, 94% of people are looking at the visual elements of a page. Do they like the way this page looks? And if they don't, a lot of times they might leave in that first few seconds. And where this is becoming, where this is very important is that, particularly in B2B decisions, that most people are actually going to go look at someone's website before making a purchasing decision. And so it's very important to create an attractive website along with creating all this content. The visual pieces are an important factor as much as the text and other types of multimedia. And the thing is, it's always been a challenge to create good-looking websites, and particularly good-looking websites that have emotional connection with your audience. But back in 2007, 2008, a little device came out that changed the world in many ways, called the iPhone. While in the first browser, it definitely is the one that made it popular. And so suddenly now there's this whole new challenge for making websites attractive, in that they've got to be attractive on these big desktop screens and laptops, and on these really small phone screens. And of course, the use of mobile browsing on phones has grown considerably over the last 5 years. In the first quarter of 2015, a third of web pages were browsed using smartphones and mobile phones. But then things got even trickier just a few years back when all these tablets came out, all these other crazy-sized phones that now we didn't just have smartphones and the small screen and the big screens. We now had all these screens in between we had to deal with. And in fact, in 2014, mobile devices, smartphones, and tablets are now used to access the internet more than the desktops and large monitors that for many years we were building websites for. And so now there's this whole new challenge of how do we not just make a site look good, but make it look good on all these different devices. And the stakes are pretty high. 61% of people say they're likely to leave a site if it isn't mobile friendly. I, in particular, what's interesting is that one of the things we've seen is sort of this proliferation of all these pop-ups and a lot of people trying to do fancy things. And it's amazing. I just wonder how many of these people do QA on their sites when you get this pop-up that's blocked out the entire screen. There's no interface to block it. Immediately, it's the back button. And doing that actually will get you dinged in the search engines. In fact, the search engines now are saying mobile friendly is important. Google rolled out a mobile friendly update a few months back. And after that update, it was seen that nearly half of non-mobile web pages lost rankings. Not necessarily always significant amounts, and there were, in fairness, there were some that gained, but still, overall, about more than 25% of non-mobile websites lost rankings. And so mobile is very important, but it can be tricky. It can be tricky to pull off. And there's a few strategies on how to pull off mobile. In 8 to 10 years ago, the most common way was what we called the Mdot approach. And basically what that would be is someone comes to a website, the server would detect, is this a mobile phone, and then it would redirect someone to a different website. Or possibly the same website with a different theme. And so, I remember the first time I saw this was Yahoo did this. And so if you went to yahoo.com, then you get redirected to m.yahoo.com, and you get their mobile experience. There is another way that's sort of similar called adaptive serving. It gets very technical how that works, and it's really, I wouldn't recommend it for anyone outside of a top 1,000 website because it can get very expensive to do. But the thing is, for the rest of us, and even the Fortune 500 use this new technique that's really only been around. The first time I heard of it, I think, was 2011, and then sort of exploded onto the web, called responsive design. And the concept here is that instead of creating all these different themes for all these different size browsers, we're going to create a single theme that will organize itself differently depending on the width of the device that it's dealing with. And so responsive is a great way. Well, it still takes work to build this over just building on a single screen. We found that this is a lot less expensive than the old approach of creating dedicated websites for different sizes. And so the way this basically works is that you start by defining what are called breakpoints based on the widths of popular screen sizes. And there has become kind of a standard around this. The standard normally is 4 breakpoints. There are people that will do 5, but 4 breakpoints normally for smartphones, tablets, desktops, and then there's crazy ultralight cinema wide screens. And then what you're going to do is you are now going to design elements of your page around those breakpoints. And so one of the things that people did 5 years ago and still is done on multi-million-dollar websites is where people will actually wireframe out every single size page. And so the home page will be wireframed out in phones, tablets, desktops, large. And every single element will be designed. And if you've got the budget to do that, great. But it is a very expensive process. Definitely not something you'd want to do on a site that's less than 6 figures. So a kind of more efficient way of doing that, that's used even with large websites, is to kind of create key design elements and then define define general page layouts and how are they going to change as the width of as we hit different breakpoints, and then also how do the design elements change as we hit different breakpoints. And then one of the things that I highly recommend is bringing this all into a style guide, kind of going down the left-hand side of the page. This is kind of it's very small, but it's kind of like a subset of a style guide, but a way of showing these sort of responsive elements and what they look like. We will actually be doing a lot of how all of this works in session 2. We'll be doing a lot of like how do we create responsive content, responsive themes. And one of the biggest time-saving recommendations is use a responsive framework. This stuff can be very tricky to build from the ground up, and luckily there's some good ones out there. We recommend, and we like to work with one called Twitter Bootstrap. Actually, a lot of times it's now just called Bootstrap nowadays, but it was created by Twitter several years ago, and it's taken the web by storm. It's running north of, in a few short years, running north of 10% of websites, because it just makes doing responsive much more organized, and gives you lots of little widgets and lots of things to play around with to help create more attractive websites. And so we'll actually be in session 2, we'll be digging into how to work with this Bootstrap framework. And we're going to be doing it not from the standpoint of someone who's a themer. This is going to be from someone that doesn't really know anything about CSS and markup. They're just able to cut and paste or use some WYSIWYG widgets to insert stuff, but they need to create this attractive, high-gloss content on sort of every size, any size sort of post. So, just as a quick summary, we've been looking at how we attract, and so the first part of that is we need to be able to promote our content. So we need content that's going to rank well in SEO, that we can share in social, that we have feeds, maybe even breaking feeds down by taxonomies or authors, things like that. And we need to be able to do email promotions around our content. The content has got to be impressive. Once we're getting people to the website, we've got to have that impact look that creates that emotional connection. It's important to do a style guide so that we're getting sort of these high gloss looks of sort of like an online magazine that's consistent across the website. We want to integrate in multimedia, and so we need a good way of doing that. And we need, fast load times are important, which can be challenging a lot of times with these sophisticated, high-powered content management systems that are out there nowadays. And then we also need the ability to engage. So giving people easy ways to get to similar content, giving them ways to comment and share, subscribe to the comment, and so forth. This is what we need to build out the attraction side of what we're doing for a website. So once we've got, we're building good content, we've got people coming to our site, we're promoting, engaging, and so forth, now we can start converting. Taking that traffic and starting to turn these people into prospects, leads, and hopefully getting them to become customers. And again, a lot of this I put in the context of a business that's trying to generate leads, but a lot of the same principles apply to a nonprofit that might be trying to get donations or people to sign up for some sort of events. Or so there's lots of different. In fact, I remember we were talking with a large online magazine, and we're talking about conversion. Like, oh, we don't convert. We don't need to generate leads, but actually they had calls to what they're trying to do is they want to get people to subscribe to be a member of the site, and they actually do have calls to actions to get people to sign up. And then their conversion is getting people to subscribe to the site. And a lot of startups work that way. They want to get people, using their trials and all that kind of stuff. So that might be a type of conversion. And so conversion, it's got a lot of different meanings depending on the type of site that you have. But it's basically getting users to take action. And conversion is what increases leads, sales, retention, or the things that really the organization finds valuable. Whether that's donations or market share, people using the system, and so forth. One of the things that's also kind of interesting is that I think an error that I've seen over many years is that there's a lot of people that kind of focus on getting more traffic to their website, and it can be a lot of work. There's a lot of competition to drive more traffic to your website when a lot of times they could build better conversion mechanisms. Either do some A/B testing around conversion mechanisms that they already have, or build out additional offers and provide new landing pages and ways to convert. And a lot of times that can actually increase the number of leads that are coming in 2 to 5 times by doing that, where without necessarily a ton of effort, where it could actually take a lot of work to try to increase traffic, particularly on a site that's already generating a healthy amount of traffic, to increase traffic by 2 to 5 times. So conversion a lot of times could be a great place to get some easy wins. And then one of the things that's important is providing multiple ways for people to engage. And a lot of what happens is that a lot of people, they think about people late in the buying cycle. So here's a demo form, or here's a contact form where people, they want to set up a sales consultation or something like that. But a lot of times when you're doing thought leadership and content marketing, you're going to be there's going to be a lot of people early in the buying cycle. They're just doing research. And so you need to have these things that are called top of the funnel offers. They might be ebooks, or they might be white paper. They could even be, heck, a T-shirt or a coupon, or all kinds of things. But things that are sort of easy buy-ins that allow you to capture people's information. So it's very important to be able to have conversion mechanisms at all different levels. And so there's sort of this, this concept that's this concept of nurturing visitors to customers. That's really important to understand. And the people that are really doing a great job with content and inbound marketing, this is something that they've been spending a lot of time honing. And so what happens is, let's say that someone is out there looking for widgets, and we happen to be a company that provides widgets. And so we might be creating content, and so when someone's searching a search engine, we show up in organic search. We show up in the number 3 position. And so there's a certain amount of trust that people kind of associate with showing up in the 3rd position. And someone says, they showed up fairly high in the search engines. Google thinks they're special. So I'm going to go ahead and give a click and go check out their website. Now, if they're met by a poor-looking website, they might click away. Or if they're on a mobile phone and it's not a mobile website, they're much more likely to click away. But if they see, hey, no, this is a good-looking website. This is worth my time to spend some time on this website. And so they might be on a blog post and say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and read the post. And then if this post, the post was valuable, then they might go ahead and now say, hey, you know what? I like these guys. I'm going to go share some. I'm going to share this piece of content with my friends on social media. And now let's say, but people that they might have found this one post interesting, but they're not yet have enough trust to say, I want to talk to a salesperson, and have to be, dealing with all that. And so, but a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll put a sales form on their blog posts, and they'll say, well, I'm not ready to engage in that. So a lot of times, not many people fill that out. But instead, if we were to create some sort of, say, ebook that's something like the 5 things, the 5 most important things to understand about widgets, something that's really really relevant to what they're looking for, and now that is what we call the call to action that's on the blog, is to click through and get this ebook. Oh, that's I'm impressed enough that I might go ahead and do that and fill out the form and give them now I'm giving up my email. I'm giving them permission to market to me through email. It's not the high-pressure sales call. But so, we're building trust along the way. And then it might be that they really like the ebook and they're impressed. And some people say, oh, now I'm ready to do the sales call. Other people, maybe they're not ready for that. And so another piece of nurturing is something is using email. Could be through simple newsletters and email promotions, or even more sophisticated marketing automation platforms like a Marketo or a Hubspot or something like that, where they drip information, but we follow up with some nice follow-up. We follow up with a nice other offer, maybe a more what we call a middle of the funnel offer, and then they might say, okay, I'm going to go read that, and then at that point we might have built enough trust that now they're ready to do a sales call. And so this is something we call lead nurturing. It's important moving people, looking to how we move people and build trust to get them to the depth of engagement we need to get them to be what we call a sales-ready lead. So what tools do we need, and what does this kind of look like to be able to build out all these landing pages? First thing you're going to need is you're going to need a way. You're going to be creating these premium offers, and ebooks, white papers, things that are digital that don't cost per unit every time to build are a great way to start. Although we have seen things like T-shirts and other things be effective. Just depends on what the organization is doing. But a lot of times, let's say we build an ebook, are 5 things you need to know before you're buying your next widget or something, and we create a thank you page where people can download this piece of content. We create a landing page where it's going to have a form for people to submit their information to get this. And then when people are submitting, a lot of times we want to put them into a different type of database. And so you might have your sales lead, your CRM, something like Salesforce or something like that, but marketing leads might be more top of the funnel. So a lot of times we're going to keep them in sort of a separate database that we're going to be doing email marketing to. And so then, there's a question of how do we market these landing pages? And you can do that. A lot of people use pay-per-click search, social media. You can use organic search. You can use the traditional ways of marketing these particular offers. But another great way is that we've been spending this time building traffic to our attraction content. And so one of the things we want to do is create these sort of calls to actions on our attraction content that is relevant to particular offers. And so getting people, and a lot of times when you're building out an inbound marketing site properly, your attraction content's where most of the people are going to come. So you might get 80, even 90% of people coming to your blogs and videos and things like that, as opposed to your homepage. So we want to make sure that we've got relevant offers as calls to actions going to those landing pages. And then you're going to want some way of nurturing people from sort of these marketing leads into becoming sales leads. And on the sort of easy side of doing this, I'd say the small business side, you can use something as simple as a MailChimp. Email is a very effective way of doing this. Constant Contact. On the high end, you can get pretty sophisticated with this using things like a HubSpot or a Marketo. Some of the big fancy marketing automation platforms. And so one of the things that what kind of impact does having these landing pages and this breadth of offers have? Well, companies that have 20 landing pages, and of course this is going to be different types of offers for different situations, are shown to have 3.5 times more leads than companies with less than 5. So it can be very powerful to be building out these different offers and ways to convert for your target audience. So some quick tips on landing page optimization. Off to the right-hand side, we've got some kind of screenshots of some landing pages. These are ones that we use. One of the bottom one is actually built inside of our CMS. The top one is actually built in HubSpot or marketing automation platform. And there's some reasons why sometimes you might want to build one and one other, but some of the things that are important is that you need to create offers that are valuable enough that people are going to give us their contact information, normally in email. We could ask for phone also. Normally in email, and permission to market to them through email and or through through the phone. One of the things that we found to be very important is to create visuals. So if you look at the top offer, that's for an ebook. There actually is a physical version of that book, although that is a mock-up of what that might look like. And we found once we put that on there, it doubled the number of people that were submitting because it looks more substantial and Also, it's very important to create a quick write-up of the benefits that your audience is going to get by reading this piece of content. Also, a lot of times playing around with the number of form fields can significantly change your how many people are submitting. So you always want to kind of strike that balance between how much information you're trying to gather versus how many fields that you're going to be putting on there. And then, one other kind of neat trick is removing the navigational elements from a page can significantly help with conversions. And so, if you look at sort of the bottom landing page, you see that the menu's there, and there's other things. So there's many different things for people to click on if they're not interested in this. With the top one, all of that's been removed. So it's just one action people can take. And there's times one format's better than the other, but it's a nice little trick and something that you want to have available to you when you're building landing pages, that for those that, particularly if you're sending pay-per-click traffic and things like that, you want to remove all the navigation and make it so there's one thing for them to do. So I've used the term calls to action, and a lot of people are kind of like, what's that? And so calls to actions really are just kind of house ads. It may seem, might seem a little odd to be putting ads for your own stuff on your website, but it's a very effective way of channeling your visitors that have got a deeper interest in what it is you're doing. And so these are some examples of some CTAs we recommend doing is normally doing a CTA for each one of your premium offers. One that would go into a sidebar, generally uses sort of above the fold, and then another one that's the rectangular one at the bottom. That one's more to put at the bottom of a piece of content. So if someone, they read through a piece of content and they get to the bottom of a page, and then now we've got a CTA for them to go and download some sort of ebook. I kind of, just as a contrast, CTAs can be for lots of different things. So this is one for hiring that we had. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. And of course, one of the big important things is to do A/B testing, trying different types of creative to see which is the most effective. So some ideas on how to create, how to build effective CTAs. This first one's really more of a stat, and I find this really interesting because a lot of organizations create webinars. So of course we're on a webinar now, so it's kind of ironic. But a lot of organizations spend a lot of time trying to create these webinars. They build these email lists to send these webinars out to. And what's interesting is that actually the ebooks, doing ebook CTAs on your attraction content actually gets people converting twice as much as promoting webinars through emails. Plus, it also helps you build your list as far as people to notify when you have webinars that are coming up. So some tricks with CTAs is you want to build them with contrasting colors to your website so they get noticed. But I will caution here that you also don't want them to be too gaudish and detract from your website. So there's always striking that good balance between you want them to stand out, but you don't want them to diminish the look of the site also. There's a lot of kind of best practices about how to write them. One of my favorite ones is that you want to create a button so people understand this is a thing to click on, and then you want to be using action verbs, so something short in the button to match your headlines. So your headlines might be, download the 5 things you need to know about widgets, and then your button might have on it download now. And that's a very effective text combination to use for CTAs. And then one of the things that is very powerful is that as you build out premium offers, you're going to have, let's say that you've got 3 different types of services that you offer, and you're targeting, and you eventually want to create 3 different premium offers for each one of those services. What becomes important is being able to match the CTA on a page. So you might be writing about, let's say, sales incentives, and so you've got an offer of sales incentives. You want to make sure that the CTAs on that page are targeted to the page's subject, and to get a little bit more sophisticated, if you've got ways of figuring out what the visitor interest is, you're making sure the CTAs are targeted that way, and you'll get much better results that way. And it's a little tricky to pull this off with some traditional content management systems. There's an area where you kind of need, it helps to add some extra tools in that allows you to do kind of this page-by-page level targeting of these calls to actions. And then a framework that HubSpot came up with, I think, is a very effective way of thinking of lead nurturing, is kind of this idea that you're moving people through a marketing funnel in much the same way you move people through a sales funnel. And so a lot of times people get into the funnel through a top-of-the-funnel offer. And a top-of-the-funnel offer, ebooks are a great way to do it. These need to be written purely from your target audience's perspective. What are their needs? They shouldn't be salesy. Now, what will happen is when they subscribe, a few days later, they would get an email inviting them to do something. Eventually, they would get a middle-of-the-funnel offer, where now you can talk a little bit more about how you do things. And so it's kind of a nice balance between information that they need and information about what makes your organization kind of different about doing that. And then the bottom of the funnel offers, that's when people are sort of ready to buy, and that's where you kind of get into that sales ready lead. And a lot of times this is where you transfer the lead from the sales program, sales CRM, or marketing CRM into the sales CRM. And you're leaving it normally in the marketing CRM also, so that you can still do email marketing and so forth. So this is how our inbound marketing website is starting to kind of map out. The 3 major traffic sources we're focusing on is search, particularly organic search, Not saying there aren't other types of marketing that are important, but these are the ones we're focusing on as providing the kind of the highest value: social media and email. Content-wise, we've got the brochure content, that's fine, but the bulk of our website is really this attraction content that's establishing us as thought leaders. And then we've got these, we might have our contact us forms, demo requests, sales requests, those types of things. We also are mixing in these top-of-the-funnel offers with CTAs for people to get to those, bring them into bringing into some sort of marketing database, and then having some form of way of reaching out to people through email marketing to nurture them into being sales leads. So when you're doing all this stuff, that's a lot of pieces to bring together. And so what becomes very important is that we need to make sure that we're doing all this stuff as efficiently as possible. And so one of the things that's very important to do in the inbound process is to develop really good metrics and to make sure to use them. There's a lot of people have set up Google Analytics, for example, but they haven't. They never look at it, or if they do, they haven't set up some of the more important pieces to do. And so, real quick, I'll kind of go through why metrics are so important. First of all, they allow us to work smarter. Really what we're trying to do with metrics, if we've set them up properly, is we want to understand what activities produce better value, not just traffic, but we want to look at things like how many people are submitting forms, things along those lines. And so then we can start to look at when we make a change to the design of the website, did the value go up or down? When we, for each piece of content, are we adding value? Which piece of content are adding more or less? Which marketing channels are producing the most value, so we know where to focus our efforts. The other thing I think that's very important with metrics is that it creates objectives or KPIs, key performance indicators, and so that everybody that is involved in making the website impactful, that they all know what these objectives are and all striving for the same thing. And then the other thing, I think the last thing that's really important with sort of an analytics system, a true analytics system, is that it's pulling data from different places so that we understand better who the people are that are on our website. And so we'll take a quick look at how that works. So a quick way of how to, how to do this stuff is to start on any website, install Google Analytics. It's free, easy to use. But then take the next step, which is very powerful, is use Google Analytics goals and valued events to measure all valuable activities on the websites. Generally, I like to use goals to measure conversion activities, form submissions, phone calls, things along those lines, and valued events to measure things like more engagement type things like commenting in social, sharing in social, watching videos, things along those lines. But we want to make sure that we are measuring everything that produces value and associating a number with those things. There's also a system inside of Google Analytics that's very powerful, but there's some things that have to be done to set it up called custom dimensions. And in the older version of Google Analytics, it's called custom attributes. And what custom dimensions allows you to do is to associate additional pieces of information to things like pages and visitors. And so a good example of this is that you can associate an author of a piece of content as a custom dimension, and then you can actually pull back and say what authors are producing the most valuable content or generating the most traffic. And you can do the same thing with things like taxonomy terms. So what topics are producing the most value, and that all can be done through custom dimensions. And then another sort of power trick is tag your users. So that way you can track what individual people are doing. By default, whenever you're looking at Google Analytics reports, everything is an aggregate. You can't single out a single person and say, what is it they're doing? But there is ways that you can actually tag a person, and you're tagging them with an anonymous token, but you can pull back and say, this person has done this. And there is a way that, we'll see this in a second, that when someone submits a form or something like that, now they become known, now you can merge together information about who they are along with all the analytics and all the visits they've been doing to your website and all the good things that are in Google Analytics. So one of the things, if we set up our goals and value events properly and we've scored everything, we now can start to understand what on our website is producing the most value. And so this is kind of a custom report that's generated. We have a kind of a system for generating it, but it could be done. This data all goes into Google Analytics, and there's ways to kind of do filters to look at some of this data in Google Analytics, or it can be exported into an Excel spreadsheet. But basically, this is a way that we can understand how much value is our entire website producing. And we can see then where is this value coming from. Here are our valued events, social shares, CTA clicks, whatever we want to put value around. Here are our conversion goals, so top of the funnel offers, contact forms, things like that. And then we can also go and say which content is producing the best value. Because we can score all the things, we look at the events of all the things that happen once someone came into the website, or we can look at things like traffic sources. What traffic sources are producing the most value? Which ones maybe should we focus on more? If we are using our custom dimensions properly, we can create some custom tags. And so we can see in the top left is here we're looking at things like what content types are being pushed, are producing the most value, and realize that out of the box, Google Analytics doesn't understand what a content type is. But there's ways to push this information into Google Analytics so it can produce reports along it. So, here's a report of which content types are producing the most value. Or to the top right, what authors are producing the most value. Bottom right, which topics are producing the most value. Which things are people most interested in? So maybe it'll give some ideas on what we should write more about. In the bottom left, this is kind of how advanced things can get kind of interesting. Is what I've done here is because we pushed content types, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to filter this report by blog post. I want to look at just blog posts, and one of the other pieces of information that I'm pushing over to Google Analytics as a custom dimension is the number of words that are in a blog post. And so now I can see what is the optimal length for a blog post, or a landing page, or something like that. So there's all kinds of interesting sort of extra pieces of data that gives a real competitive edge in understanding what types of things produce more value on our website. One of the things talked about is that it can help people stay focused on KPIs. So one of my pet peeves of analytics is that people, it's over there, it's over in another system, people hardly ever look at it. But by having just a few simple reports, a lot of times we can get the entire team understanding the performance of the website. So this is kind of a dashboard that I recommend, that I really kind of like for content marketing. Down the bottom, we say, all right, we need a couple blog posts a week. We're mapping those. We're also able to see the bigger circle is telling us which ones are producing the most value. And so blog posts lead to traffic. And so what we see is I've got an objective of we want 30,000 visitors a month. Here we missed it by a little bit, so we might need the team to start thinking about how can we tune that out. And then traffic leads to conversions. And so we've missed that by even a little bit more, so maybe we need to work on coming up with some new conversion mechanisms or optimizing them. But so this is a way that everybody can be on the same page as far as what are we building towards. And then finally, I talked a little bit about how on the internet, there's a lot of information about people that's publicly accessible. Social media has made kind of an explosion in this. And so while if people have made stuff private, you can't necessarily get to that, but a lot of people, they do a lot of things in public, and so we can bring that information together. And so this here is someone that came to the website 3 times. All of that's being monitored in Google Analytics with a tracking key. And then they did a form submission on their 3rd visit. And so we saw they submitted their name and an email address. So now we know who they are, where you can ping that against an API. And there's tons of these APIs out there that can provide some interesting insight into people and other things on the web. And so we pinged an email against it, and it came back with some of this person's social media profiles, a little blurb of kind of their background, which is actually taken from Twitter, things like their clout score. And so this gives us a really nice snapshot of who this person is, how they're engaging with us, and now allows us to do a much more informed sales call and allows us to engage with this person in a much more informed way. Plus it allows us to do things like see when they come back to the website and so forth. And so these are the types of things that you're going to see the websites of the future providing this kind of functionality. So when we're all said and done, we've built out this this kind of new breed of inbound marketing website that's allowing us to leverage these traffic sources as best as possible. Develop all this content that's attracting people and converting, and then we've got all these analytics that are going on. We've even got integrations that some are plug and play, some are easy to do into systems. They might be your email systems and so forth. So these are the things that this next generation of content marketing, we call it CM2S's, content management and marketing platforms, are providing. And so one of the cool things that we're going to be doing as a part of this workshop is that there's actually a system that we've been building that does all of this. And there are systems out there. So HubSpot, for example, does a lot of this, and HubSpot is a fantastic platform. But its SaaS nature sometimes is there's some limitations, and a true SaaS platform with vendor lock-in is not always the best way to go. And so what we've been building over the last several years is a open source way of doing this. And so what we're trying to get feedback on this and teach people kind of in a hands-on way how to work with these tools and build all of these things out. And so what we're going to be doing as a part of this workshop is everyone will be receiving an email with instructions on how to go through and set up a hosting instance. And we will give everyone an example website that they can go through, and they can build their own website with it, or just use it as a training exercise. And then over the next several sessions, we're going to be looking at different elements of it. And so in the second session, we're going to be doing a lot with how to create responsive web pages and content, which is very important because there's a lot of sites that have responsive themes nowadays, but people aren't putting responsive content, which breaks the responsive themes. So how do we create sort of these glossy, responsive pages, and really kind of like just the basics of how a content management system works, how to kind of, and a lot of the things that are common for marketers to want to do. The third session is going to be about best practices for creating attraction content. So how to come up with topics, how to write good headlines, a lot of things like that, how to pretty up your content. And then we're going to get into SEO, how to pick good keywords, how to optimize your content to rank well in the search engines, and then how to promote your content using social media, email, RSS feeds, and those things. The fourth session is going to be about conversions. How do we create landing pages, thank you pages, web forms, calls to actions? How do we get them mapped to the right content? And then the fifth one's going to be all about analytics. And so, how do we set up our analytics so that we're getting all of this extra information? We're able to understand who visitors are and so forth. So at this point, I'll just go ahead and open it up to if anyone has any questions. And Philippa, are you kind of wrangling those questions?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. So we have a few questions that were asked,
okay.
And this one is actually a two-part question, and it goes: if you have a limited amount of time or resources, where would you recommend starting? And the second part of that question would be: how can you prioritize when you're beginning to use content marketing?
Actually, okay, what we need to do is get your email address. There is a book, and it's one of our middle-of-the-funnel offers that actually deals with that kind of exact issue. When you're first getting started, where should you start? What should you be focused on? And really, a lot of it is focus on the attraction side. There's not really, the first thing you need to do is you need to be getting people to your website. In fact, a lot of people, when they come to us, they have a lot of custom functions they want in their website, and they might want to do very custom design. And the reality is with a platform like Open Enterprise, you can actually get, and I will say even HubSpot, they've got like a kind of a beginner package. It's only $300. It gives you a lot of the good tools that you're going to need to get people coming to your website and attracting. And that's where that's the important part to start. Don't worry so much about the design of your website, particularly a custom design. If you're on a tight budget, there's ways to get a template that will still have a good looking, will still be good looking, but won't have near the cost of a custom design. Don't worry about a whole bunch of custom features. Implement the important features to start doing content marketing. And we'll also have a lot of tips as far as we go along, particularly in the third session. Tips of how to kind of get started, how to generate topics, stuff like that, and get going. But as far as like building a website out, that's going to be the best way to do it. And then as you start to get traffic, then look to what we call a phase 2 website. Now you're starting to bring in some more sophisticated conversions. And now you might do a custom theme. You might start to look to bring in more custom features like, say, events calendars and things along those lines. And so, yeah, that's what there's an ebook that we have called the Results-Oriented Web Roadmap, and it breaks everything down in kind of like 3 phases. And the first phase is great for people that are looking to kind of start and do this on a cheap budget or on a startup budget. In fact, there's a term I really like called growth hacking. That's kind of used, and so a lot of it's sort of like the growth hacking. It's like how do these startups that have got kind of a lot of roll up their sleeves and get it done, grassroots. It's kind of some of that kind of stuff. How that can be done to kind of launch a lot of this.
Okay. A second question that was asked is, in any of the next webinars, will you be talking about server requirements for the content marketing machine?
Okay, so that's a good question. One thing I did. And I still need to cut this presentation down. It's still a little long. I actually did cut out the performance side of this. Performance can get kind of tricky and technical. What my recommendation is, it's going to depend on your needs. But if you've got like a typical website, I highly recommend using a performance platform that's already out there. And just the brief parts of it is that the top content management systems that are out there, the big 3 is WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. They all run on essentially the same platform. The programming language is PHP. Pretty much everyone runs them on Linux, although you could run them on a Windows server. Pretty much everyone's using MySQL or some variant as a database, and some sort of SQL database. And then the last piece, let's see, and then the web servers, the fourth piece of what's called a LAMP stack. So everyone's kind of running on the same stack, which would be Linux. The database is normally MySQL or some sort of replacement for MySQL, PHP, and then web servers are kind of interesting. A lot, Apache has been the big heavyweight, although there's a lot of people running on a lighter weight kind of up-and-comer called Nginx. But the challenge is that to get these CMSs to run fast, there's really some additional things that you need to add in to tune out that stack. And so things like CDNs, reverse proxy caches, that basically sort of like so you're not always hitting the programming side of the system. Pages kind of get built and cached in a caching layer, and so like there's a system called Varnish that a lot of people use. And then there's things like there's also these things called memcache, but this all gets kind of technical, and there's lots of articles out there. What I recommend what I recommend doing is just using a hosting platform that's tuned for it. And so what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be using a hosting platform called Pantheon. And so Pantheon, if you're in the Drupal world, they're very well known. They also do WordPress hosting. And one of the things they do is they give everyone free sandboxes. So you can set up a site, you can set up an account with them and create a new instance, and you can do all the development you want for free. And then if you want to pay for the site, you can pay for the site. And performance hosting is not $6 a month hosting, but they have a $25 a month. They have a really they have a $100 a month platform, and there's a lot of value beyond even. You get sort of like a dev staging live environments, so making changes to your website, you're not doing them on live. There's a lot of kind of cool features. But if it's one of the things you don't want to host on Pantheon, you can just use the sandbox and then export the site and go move it somewhere else. But so, I hope that helps from a performance standpoint. It's kind of a complex subject, and that's why I say for most people that aren't like, hey, I really want to build this myself, I highly recommend using a performance platform like Pantheon. Aqua is another one that we like to use. There's a new one that kind of came out that I really like in the Drupal world, Pantheon Platform.io. So there's a few of these that are out there that they've done all the legwork to create this performance stack for you.
Someone else actually did a follow-up and asking if Drupal is not too buggy for a simple website.
So that is okay. So that's a great question. Okay, yeah. So I've probably let the cat out of the bag a little bit as far as what this platform's built on. So Open Enterprise is built on top of Drupal, and Drupal is notorious for having a long learning curve. But that kind of has to do with that. The traditional Drupal experience. The traditional Drupal experience is people download it, they install it, and it's essentially like dumping a bunch of Lego blocks onto a table. In fact, it's almost like dumping just a few Lego blocks on the table, and then you've got to go find all these other blocks, and then you've got to go build stuff. You've got to understand how to build all this stuff. Where something like WordPress is very easy to use. You install it, and you've got a blog out of the box. But there is what we've done is we've created something called a distribution of Drupal. And so with Open Enterprise, you have a blog out of the box, just like WordPress. You've got landing pages, you've got thank you pages, all of that stuff's out of the box. And effectively what happens is that we've taken that, that initial constructor set for building websites, everything got dumped onto a table, and then we've gone and built a whole bunch of stuff. The stuff that we know marketers need, and so you don't start on a blank slate. You start with all this stuff built. Even things like event calendars and location finders and a lot of these other types of things that are common requests are all pre-built. And then one of the huge advantages to Drupal is that it can scale into really any size organizations, where there are some challenges scaling WordPress and some of the other platforms out there. And so, the real goal in this was to, and we've done a lot of stuff to also help with usability, but to give people a platform that they don't have to go build all this stuff. Out of the box, it comes with a lot of the stuff they're going to want, but yet if they are growing or they're in fact, I'm not 100% sure I can release the name, but a Fortune 20 company is actually rolling out their website in this. So it can scale to that level if you need it to.
Another question is Open Enterprise open source?
Okay, so that's a good question. What we've done is that there is the core of Open Enterprise, so what we call Open Enterprise CE, the Community Edition, and it is all open source. Which is actually 95% plus of the system. There's a few things that are premium components, the theme, CSS, and JavaScript, and then there's a few JavaScript widgets. Everything other than that is open source. And it's really a lot like if you're familiar sort of buying templates from, say, ThemeForest or something like that. You can go install, say you install WordPress or Drupal or something like that. Everything that's the core part of it, it's all licensed GPL. You can use it however you want, but things like the CSS code and so forth. And so it's one of those things where you don't have to use, there is a Bootstrap-based, I just realized I used a term that people might not be, we did talk about Bootstrap a little bit. So there's a Bootstrap-based theme, but then we've created a premium theme that extends the Bootstrap theme and so forth, and everyone will be getting a license for the premium components. But then if you do want to use it on more than one website, you can use the free parts, the core of the system, as much as you want. and use your own, just add in your own theme. But you will be able to you will have one license for using the premium components. So I hope that kind of kind of clears it up. So, and I'll say, the system is pretty much all Drupal stuff. So it's all a part of Drupal core and the Drupal community. We've just done a lot of stuff to kind of organize that stuff and build it out.
2 final questions. One, do the Elton products support Drupal 8?
We don't at this point. In fact, one of the things that we're actually trying to do is, this has actually been around 2,000 hours to build this thing, of which it's a big part of it's a big part of how we sell. But we realize that when Drupal 8 comes out, we are looking at we maintain about 30 modules that are in the system. It's going to be a huge expense to port this stuff to Drupal 8. And we would really like to, but we need to understand the sustainability of it. And so one of the things, this has kind of been what we call the pro version of Open Enterprise, has kind of been our secret sauce for a while. And so one of the things we're really looking to do is kind of get it out into the marketplace, get it in the hands of developers and other organizations alike, kind of get feedback on it. So we're really trying to understand how can we make this sustainable for porting to Drupal 8. And it will probably be, it's going to be, it would be at least 6 months before Drupal 8 comes out that we'd probably even start to look at a port. Because even building in Drupal 7, we've had to do a lot of patching and a lot of work to existing modules that are pretty mature. And so, we're going to need some of those modules to be, somewhat mature before we start to do that port. But that is the hope. The hope is, we feel that, almost like what the commerce guys have done with commerce. That e-commerce is a very particular type of website. Same thing, Acquia has done with Commons. That's a very important style of website. We think an inbound marketing website is a very important style of website. But Commerce Guy's got $5 million in funding, and Acquia's got who knows what to build out those. And we've kind of done a lot of this on our own time.
Okay. Same person asked. So do we need to install Drupal before we install Open Enterprise? And how does Drupal Commerce work with Open Enterprise?
Okay, 2 good questions. We'll be sending you instructions on what to do, but yeah, the basic process is create an account on Pantheon, then you'll be able to create a new instance, and you would create a new Drupal 7 instance, and then what you'll do is you'll add in our training account to that, and then what we'll do is we'll end up like going in and overriding and setting up regular Drupal 7 with Open Enterprise, making sure everything's kind of set up right so that you've got kind of a fully built instance. And like I said, that's covered in the instructions that we'll be sending out to people. The second question was, what was the second part of that question?
How does it play with Drupal Commerce?
Okay, so that's a good question. We've tried to build Open Enterprise as modular as possible. So things like the blog and the landing page conversion system, the intelligence system, all of that kind of stuff can be incorporated into any Drupal 7 website. And in the early days of Open Enterprise, it was very modular. We could plug in any of these components, the events calendar and all that kind of stuff in any Drupal 7 website, and you would lose certain little pieces, but it would work. You get the important functionality. And we have built e-commerce sites, so we probably start 80 to 90% of our projects with Open Enterprise. We do have a few projects that we do start with Drupal Commerce. Like if we're going to have a strong, like we know commerce is going to be the core of what that site's about. We will start with commerce. Oftentimes we'll start with Open Enterprise, and if commerce is a small part, then we'll integrate commerce in. We have also done the same thing with Commons and a couple of other distributions. And so a lot of the components inside of Drupal 8 are portable into other systems. And so it becomes kind of like a bit of a nuanced, if you already have, say, a Drupal Commons site, what would be good is to kind of go through, see what this stuff is, and then you can pull out, if you're familiar with Drupal, these things are all built as features. Now, there might be a few things that you need to do to alter the feature, but the feature will bring a lot of the important things into any Drupal 7 website or any other type of distro.
That was the last question for the webinar.
Okay. Awesome. Well, some great questions. So, like I said, this is I think it's going to be a pretty neat, kind of a unique workshop. And so I hope to see everybody, and I hope to see everybody for our session next week. We'll start digging into kind of best practices in responsive design and responsive content. Thanks for joining us.